It's quite apparent that Gintama draws inspiration from an absurd number of different things, ranging from Japan's historical events to modern pop culture. If you think about it, it's actually quite amazing that a show can go from a bit about a dating sim gone too far to a profound take on national revolution, all within the span of several episodes. And amongst the wide assortments of Gintama's pool of inspiration, there lies traditional Japanese folktales. So today, let's move one step closer to being a cultured individual by learning a thing or two about it. Now, Japanese urban legend in itself is a loaded subject which covers a wide range of different things, each with its own unique history and cultural implications. So for the sake of attempting to be coherent, I'll be covering them arc by arc. And for today, let's focus on the Ryugujo arc. The Ryugujo arc goes from episode 115 to 118 and covers the legend of Urashima Taro. The actual legend itself has existed long before the Edo period even came about, so the details of the story itself has more than likely evolved and changed with the passage of time. But the general gist of the folklore goes something like, once upon a time, there was a fisherman who goes by the name of Urashima Taro. One day, he happened to have stumbled across a group of vicious children who were picking on an innocent little turtle. Unimpressed, he decided to go and rescue said turtle and swiftly released it back to sea. The next day, a bigger turtle came to approach Urashima and informed him that the little turtle he saved yesterday was, in fact, a princess of the lost city of Ryugujo, and that he's invited to the palace since the king really wanted to thank him in person for saving his daughter. And so he naturally grew some gills and made way towards the underwater palace. There, he met up with the king and Princess Otohime, which was the princess he saved yesterday. In order to repay Urashima's kindness, the princess decided to entertain him. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on the subtext here, or if there's one in the first place, so I'll just leave it at that. Several days have passed, and Urashima remembered that he hasn't visited his aging mother in quite a while, so he decided to call it a trip and went home to visit her. Before leaving, Princess Otohime gifted him a forbidden box that mustn't be opened, because reverse psychology, that's why. After Urashima got back, he found himself in a place that he could barely recognize. Familiar, yet different. It turns out that time works a little differently in the Ryugu Kingdom. While Urashima had only spent several days in the Ryugujo, time has lapsed more than a century in his original world, basically disputing the Newtonian assumption of absolute space and time. Dumbstruck by his situation, Urashima's mind went blank, and he absent-mindedly opened the forbidden box. Now, what makes the box forbidden in the first place is that it holds the power to resynchronize Urashima back to his own timeline. But in traditional folklore, haha got you style, rather than going back to his original timeline several centuries ago, his body ages several centuries into the future instead, and he died of old age on the spot there and then. The end. So the moral of the story here is that Now if you compare it to the Ryugujo arc in Gintama, it's quite clear that a lot is referenced in this arc. So to briefly summarize what happened in Gintama, one day the Yorozuya went to the beach and saw a turtle man thing ogling women and... Okay, I realized that abridging Gintama's plot point in a somewhat coherent manner is an arduous task to say the least. So I'll just point out the parallels that I was able to identify instead. Saving a turtle in trouble, a box that turns people old, brought along to a place called Ryugujo, a princess named Otohime, a dying guy named Urashima. So with all that out of the way, let me first acknowledge that taking inspiration from Japanese folktales and adapting it to an anime isn't a novel concept by any means. And Gintama isn't even the only anime to cover the legend of Urashima Taro. But rather than focusing on petty subjects like who did what first and the entire quagmire of intellectual property, if you take a step back and look at it from afar, there seems to be an impetus for authors to implement Japanese folklores into their narrative. Now, the obvious question to ask here is, why? Needless to say, each author has their own motives and incentives for doing so. And knowing Sarachi, just because it's cool, or just because I can, would probably suffice as an answer. But let me substantiate this a bit further. If someone already has an affinity towards a particular folktale, or any niche really, then there's a high likelihood that they would seek out other media that touches upon it. Or, in other words, the folktale it takes inspiration from may serve as the initial hook for people to latch onto. To give a broad example, in the case of Gintama, if someone is really into Edo period samurais, then they might come to check out Gintama because of it. Inversely, it could also serve as a good way to introduce your culture to a wider audience, in that people who come to like Gintama may start to grow interested in the things the show covers. Like I did. Of course, there's a caveat to this. In order for you to introduce something, you'd either need to dumb it down to make it as easily accessible as possible, or risk gatekeeping your own potential audience to only those who are aware of the original reference it points to. And even though anime has a considerable international audience, the main stakeholder and target audience for the producer is still, by far, the Japanese public. And especially for Gintama, there's a lot of references that just pass through our heads for us internationals watching. Which is fine, because the show has plenty of other things to offer. But I digress. And with that, folks, thank y'all for watching, and see you next time.